First off, it is a real pleasure to get to speak with you today.
Well, I appreciate
I'm
that.
currently a film critic and film journalist, but before this, I was a youth pastor.
Oh,
So,
awesome.
so I've been reading your books for over 20 years, and I've used
Oh,
them in my sermons for, well, 20
oh,
years now. So hundreds of people, I guess by now maybe thousands of people in my church environments have been enriched and their faith strengthened because of your
oh,
work. So
that's
just want to start
awesome.
off by saying thank you.
Well, that makes my day. Let's just end it right there. Can't get any better than that.
Well, I might even have more compliments later on.
Yeah.
But with the movie or with your books,
Yeah.
they're very journalist interview evidence driven.
Yeah.
So how did you decide how to translate that into a film form in the specific approach you took?
Well, it was interesting. The Manny Sandoval, who's really the creative guy behind this, came up with a concept where he and I would take a road trip. And so we got a 1967 Ford Bronco, which, by the way, is a terrible car to drive, and took a road trip together down Route 66 through the southwestern United States. And along the way, we talk about miracles because we come from very different backgrounds. He was a Pentecostal background, so he lived in anticipation that God would do miracles. I, of course, was an atheist, a skeptic. I didn't believe it was possible initially. And so we had very different backgrounds. And so we would have discussions about miracles. And then you see flashbacks, or I don't know if you would call them flashback or a flash forward or whatever, to either to actual cases of miracles that we document, including cases published in peer-reviewed medical journals. So these are not just cases you read about on the internet. These are well-established and well-proven cases where something supernatural clearly took place. So that's kind of the storyline of it. And thanks to Manny's genius, it turned out really well. And boy, the cinematography is absolutely gorgeous. Man, you see going through the southwestern United States, it is beautiful in this film.
So to kind of to the road trip part of it,
Yeah.
was that the Wigwam? Is that
Yeah,
motel that you stayed
Wigwam.
at?
Yeah, the
Yeah,
Wigwam
Wigwam
Hotel.
motel.
Yeah,
We were watching the clip that they had of that about 20 minutes
yeah.
that we were able to watch, and my wife goes, "I think they parodied this in the movie Cars."
They might have. I mean, that was a real experience. Not only do you actually rent a wigwam to sleep in at this motel, but they have these vintage cars all around. So you got
Yeah.
some really cool cars from way back, half rusted out, but they're pretty interesting to look at.
Mhm. Um, with the with your books, one of the things that they're really great for is people use them in talking with skeptics. Even this
Yeah.
morning, I was talking with my wife, and she goes, "Actually, back when I was in high school, I handed a copy of The Case for Christ to one of my Buddhist friends, and they gave me a copy of their writings, and we actually exchanged that a conversation. That's how I shared my faith with them."
Awesome.
In developing the documentary, how did you make sure you weren't just preaching to choir, but also kind of created that similar sort of situation where it was very accessible to skeptics and not just
Yeah.
for the convinced?
That's a great question because we really do want to reach both groups of people, people who are Christians. We hope their faith will be deepened and encouraged and enriched by this. But, you know, having myself been an atheist for much of my life, I'm committed to trying to help other people who are spiritually curious to find answers that might point them toward Jesus as their ultimate hope. And so, you know, I kind of bring that perspective into the conversation, having been a skeptic myself, having been an atheist myself. I kind of bring in that perspective. And I always try to, you know, there's an old line, put the cookies on the bottom shelf. In other words, this is not an academic exploration of the miraculous. It's really the cookies are on the bottom shelf. Anybody can access the information, the stories, the accounts of these supernatural events that have taken place. And so we talk about the documentation of it and so forth, but you'll see them actually reenacted and actually lived out, I think, in a very compelling way.
Mhm. So I still work with the teenagers at my church, and I now
Yeah.
have a teenage son, and like they are growing up in this almost like post-truth version of cynicism and skepticism with deep
Yeah.
fakes, fake news, AI, everything can be faked. Seeing isn't even believing anymore.
Yeah.
What do you think the strongest argument is to Gen Alpha that miracles are real? That's the
Well,
convincing argument for them.
and we should be skeptical. We should ask tough questions because you know what? There are people. There are things that happen, and people call them miraculous, but they're not really miraculous. They're extraordinary coincidences, or it's the The fact that the initial diagnosis they have wasn't accurate. And so now the new diagnosis says, oh, I don't have cancer. Well, you never really had it in the first place. The first diagnosis was wrong. Or it could be the placebo effect, where people are being prayed for and they think they're going to feel better and they begin to feel better. So granted, those things happen, but there are cases that I believe pass very stringent tests of evidence. So how do we know these are actual miracles that took place? I look at 4 criteria personally. Number one, do we have solid medical documentation? Number 2, do we have multiple and credible eyewitnesses who have no motive to deceive? 3, is there no natural explanation that can account for what took place? And number 4, does it take place in the context of prayer? And if those 4 things are met, those 4 criteria, I think we can say with confidence that something supernatural has occurred. And I say that against the background of a whole bunch of scientific discoveries over the last 50 to 80 years in the area of cosmology, the origin of the universe, physics, the fine-tuning of the universe, DNA, information inside each cell in the body, that I believe point powerfully and persuasively toward the existence of a supernatural creator. And so against that background, it makes it reasonable that he might want to periodically intervene in the creation that he himself brought about.
So I mentioned to my pastor that I'd be speaking to you on miracles, and he came up with a question. He said it might be a little bit too technical for off the top of your head, but because in 1 Corinthians 12, Paul refers to the gifts of healing in the plural.
Yeah.
How do you see the distinction between someone claiming a single gift of healing versus Paul describing multiple gifts of healing?
Well, it's interesting that today we have people who are Bible-believing Christians who are called cessationists. Cessationists believe, there's 2 different kinds of cessationists. Some cessationists believe that miracles no longer happen. But most cessationists will concede that God is sovereign, God is, as you say, the same yesterday, today, and forever, and that he can do miracles today. Even though they're cessationists, they don't believe that miracles have stopped. Where they draw the line is whether or not a spiritual gift of healing continues. And whether that's for a one-time thing or a gift that people use repeatedly, I don't know the answer to that. However, the film doesn't take a position on that. Okay. And I'm frankly a little bit agnostic on that question. Do I believe that people today continue to have a spiritual gift of healing? I don't know. I see some evidence of it. I'm open to it. I don't take a position on it personally. Do I believe that miracles occur today? Yeah. Why? Because we have solid documentation that I think is irrefutable that they do.
Kind of going to the Case for Christ, it's almost 30 years old now, which is pretty remarkable to think about. It came out when I was in high school. If you were to update the book today, is there something new you would add, whether new evidence, new archaeological evidence, a new argument, or just a fresh perspective in light of where society's at?
Well, that's a great question. There have been a series of discoveries, archaeological discoveries and so forth, new theories about the dating of the Gospels, that they're earlier than people once supposed. So there's some new stuff out there. I did a little book called The Case for Christmas that just came out. And in that book, I deal with some new data concerning the historic reality of Christmas that has just come to light more recently from scholars. Things that show, for instance, that Luke is historically accurate as a historian. So I would probably, if I were to update it, I would probably use some more contemporary examples of, for instance, archaeological discoveries showing that Luke is right in his reporting of first century events, that he has a strong record of being accurate in what he produced. I'd probably bolster that a bit. There have been some new thinking in terms of some of the fulfillment of prophecy in the life of the Messiah that strengthen that case even stronger than before. So nothing that I've seen ever since that book was written takes away from the case for Christ. I think we have, in some ways, a stronger case for Christ than ever. You look at Dr. Gary Habermas, who I interview for that book on the resurrection of Jesus. He's in the process of writing, 5 million words, I think it is, or something, multiple huge volumes, refuting every conceivable objection to the resurrection of Jesus. I mean, it's just remarkable. So this is new scholarship that's just coming about. I think it just deepens our conviction that we can trust what the Gospels tell us about Jesus.
The inherent nature of the case books and is that they're evidence-based and interviews, and here's the arguments.
Yeah.
But they're always counterbalanced also with that emotion and the humanity of it.
Yeah.
And even as the way you describe the film, with kind of going to specific stories and that are personal.
Yes.
Like, once again, working with teenagers, so often they equate faith with knowing the right things. And needing to get them to understand it's that heart for Jesus as well. How do you always make sure that the case books and then the films always point people to love Jesus more?
Well, you know, the verse that brought me to faith after I concluded after a 2-year investigation that Jesus did return from the dead and prove he's the Son of God was John 1:12. That says, but as many as received him, to them he gave the right to become children of God, even to those who believe in his name. And I noticed that verse forms an equation of what it means to become a true follower of God. Believe plus receive equals become. And so I run into people who believe, they have an intellectual assent, they can see the historical evidence for the resurrection is clear and compelling. It's powerful and persuasive. So Jesus did return from the dead, but they've never taken that step of receiving Jesus as their forgiver and leader. And I think that in many cases is the missing step that people need to take. It's not just about head knowledge. There is a relational component. We need to receive Jesus and what he did on the cross on our behalf, his free gift of grace, his free gift of forgiveness and eternal life. And when we do that, we become a child of God forever. And that means our relationship with God then can begin and continue to grow all through this life and then come to full fruition someday in eternity.
Is there a next case book in the works?
There is.
That you can talk about?
It's funny you mentioned the Case for Christ is almost 30 years old because I am writing what I believe will be the successor to the Case for Christ. It's kind of the magnum opus of my life. I'm not talking about topic or title yet, but it'll come out in late 2027 or early 28, which would be the 30th anniversary of the Case for Christ. And to me, it's going to be one more volume that again draws upon credentialed scholars who are leaders in their field, who I asked the tough questions I had when I was a skeptic, and to see, can they produce good answers about why we can really trust this story of Christianity as being true? Because, you know, there's a lot of good stories that people can make up, but the best stories are the ones that are true. And that's what makes Christmas and Easter Christianity. That's what makes these stories the best, because they're true.
Just a couple more quick questions. First one, I'm a movie channel. What's a movie you love to recommend to people that they normally haven't heard of?
Oh, golly. Well, you know, the movie I find that a lot of people have not seen, and it's my favorite all-time movie, and I'm shocked at how many people have not seen it, is It's a Wonderful Life. You know, I run into people, what are you talking? No, I don't know about that movie. Oh, my goodness. It's been on TV 18 billion times. I love that film. And, you know, it's a funny thing. If you go to, there's a resort in Palm Springs, California, I believe it is. And if you go to that resort, they have a casita that you can rent, like a hotel room. It's a freestanding casita. And on that casita, there's a plaque. And the plaque says it was in this casita that Frank Capra wrote the final version of It's a Wonderful Life. And I thought, I want to rent that casita and write my next book in that casita. If he wrote It's a Wonderful Life in that place, I want to write a book in that casita.
To what you just said, I'm a film critic full time. I watched it for the first time just a couple years ago.
No.
Yeah.
Isn't it great?
It's incredible. It's amazing. Like, it's like a movie that lives up to the hype that just touches so much humanity.
Oh, you know, several years ago when my kids were little, I actually bought you could buy the script to the movie. And I thought this would be so much fun as a family. We're going to act it out and do it. So we got the script and the kids are all set. It was boring. It didn't bore. There's nothing like the movie itself. We gave up on that. We turned on the TV and watched the movie once again.
Final question. What is your quick pitch to my audience for why they should go see The Case for Miracles?
Because God is still in the miracle business today. and your faith will be strengthened. It will be bolstered. You will be in awe of the stories that you see portrayed in that film. Stories, again, that are documented medically, many of them published in peer-reviewed medical journals. But I'd encourage you, bring a spiritually curious friend, someone who's not sure, someone who's open perhaps, or maybe even a skeptic, but they're not sure. Bring them along. And then in the car ride on the way home, you can have a conversation. What do you think of that? What questions would you ask if you had the opportunity? You know, people are more open spiritually in the Christmas season than any other time of the year. And so it's my hope that those who are spiritually open, they might find answers in this film.
Excellent. I just wanted to say once again, ever since I've found out I was going to be interviewing you, mentioned that to various people in my life, every single person, as soon as I said your name, they told me a little anecdote of which one of their books meant something to them, whether it was Case for Faith, helping them during a time of doubt, whether it was Case for Grace during a time where they were just really struggling, and the countless stories of grace just encouraged them in those hard times. Just everyone had an anecdote. And for me personally, like I said, I've read the Case for Christ and the other books many times, and have so much enriched my ministry and my own personal faith. So I just wanted to thank you for your time, and then thank you for your ministry.
Well, you made my day. I mean, I might as well go to bed now. It ain't going to get better today. This is awesome. I sure appreciate that. You know, as a writer, you hope that when you write something and you send it out there, there'll be people on the receiving end, and God would use that to either bring them to faith or enrich their faith. So thank you. That means the world to me.